For the month of August, we're talking all about benefits in social impact careers. And today I want to talk about options for where you actually work and explore what are some of the trends around remote work, work from home, hybrid work, and all that. First, I want to start off with a joke. Why did the remote worker get fired from the lighthouse? They thought working remotely meant that they could do their job from home. I want to emphasize there's all sorts of work arrangements now, but obviously it's a privilege that many people don't have and many employers don't offer the option to have a flexible work arrangement. So I don't want to give the idea that this is available to everybody. A little bit of data to help put this into context. And I tried to find data on the percentage of social impact organizations that offer flexible or different types of work arrangements, and that's hard to find. First of all, particularly since the pandemic, the ability to have some flexibility on work location has grown, although post-pandemic, a number of employers, I'd say more in the private sector, some in government sector, are encouraging or requiring people to go back to the office full-time or at least a couple of days a week. Other days, there's all sorts of options we'll explore. But one of the benefits to take a look at as you try to grow your career and interview for jobs is really thinking about the options that might be available, what fits your lifestyle goals and types of employers you want to work for. And of course, because of COVID, there was a huge increase in flexible work arrangements. Some data from PwC, a survey shows that approximately 20% of employees worldwide, this is more for the private sector, prefer fully remote work. About 33% prefer a hybrid model, some combination of in the office and at home or in a co-working space. Research from McKinsey shows, at least in the US, and this is from 2022, about 60% of US workers can work from home at least once a week. One of the reasons why flexible work arrangements can be wonderful is that if you're required to commute for your job, whether that means by train, by subway, by bus, by car, if you can walk or bike to work, all the research shows that if you live within 20 minutes of your workspace and you can walk or bike, that's worth the equivalent of an additional $10,000 in salary, that flexibility to be close to your office. If you do have to commute, some data is that the average work commute in the US is about 1 hour daily. That's 250 hours annually. That's more than a week and a half of your life spent commuting. And there's all sorts of health concerns. The data is not 100% conclusive, but that people who spend more time commuting to work often have higher blood pressure and have less time for exercise and less time for family and other hobbies. I will say from my own experience, I've had jobs where I had to go to office 5 days a week, sometimes 2 days a week, sometimes 3. Working for an INGO was 5 days a week, except when I was traveling. For my own NGO, it was work from home, except when we had meetings or travel. As a professor, it was generally 3 to 4 times a week during the academic year, sometimes 5, but during off times, it could be once a week, or in the summer, no times per month. For PCDN, we used to work out of a co-working space pre-pandemic, and we would go in 2 to 3 times a week. Now it's 100% work from home. I will say for me, I love the flexibility of not having to go to an office, not having to stress about commute, not having the expense of transport, of putting on fancy clothes, of buying lunches. Of course, you can bring your own lunch, but those are really high expenses. And the quality of life for me is tremendously better when I either live close to work or I can work from home or have that flexibility. So what are the different types of work arrangements? So there's office. So the idea is you have to be in an office a set number of hours per week, working with your colleagues in a physical space. And that was the traditional model for a lot of professional employment. Again, it has changed. And the idea is that being in the office, you have more opportunities to build connections, to share, to work with your boss and your colleagues and really plan. Work from home means that sometimes you can work fully from home, or it could be 2 to 3 days a week, which is hybrid. So some in the office, some at home. And a lot of people like that option where you get, let's say, 2 or 3 days a week at home or 2 or 3 days in the office and have that flexibility. And it could be set days or it could change from every week. Remote work is really that you have the flexibility, and sometimes it might just be you have permission to do remote work in a particular geographic location like New York or in a country. But the idea is you don't need to be anywhere near any physical office. Maybe your organization or INGO or company has some offices or co-working spaces that you can hop around to if you want. But it's really, you have the freedom to work within the boundaries of the geographic locations your employer has set. Then there's also remote digital nomad, which basically means you can work from anywhere in the world. A lot of times that applies to independent workers but also some employers do allow that and say, we don't care where you work as long as you get the work done. Of course, you really need to check with your potential employer because there can be all sorts of legal and tax restrictions if you start working outside of your home state or country, and other things in terms of liability. There are benefits and cons to each one of these. So some people and researchers would say there's something unique about working in an office on a regular basis where colleagues can interact, plan, and get things done and be spontaneous. Some of the research shows that's true, and particularly in terms of career advancement. Some research shows, particularly for private sector companies, that being around your boss and other colleagues can help lead to more rapid advancement. I'm not sure I agree with that research. It's still not fully conclusive. Other people say the advantage of not having to be in the office is you actually get so much more work done, and you can do lots of things remotely through really well-structured synchronous and asynchronous communication. Maybe meet up quarterly or weekly or have scheduled calls. So they find I can get a lot more work done often at home. Of course, I can be distracted with things at home, but that's just something to consider. What does this all mean for your impact career? As you're exploring potential opportunities, particularly as you get to the final stages, really think about what is your preferred style? Do you like being in the office every day? Do you mind commuting? Can you live close to your employer, or you're going to have to commute 2 hours a day? I mean, the most I ever had to commute sometimes was 2 hours a day. Usually I would do it by metro, occasionally by Uber or car. And that's a lot of exhaustion, particularly when the public transport system, there's the cost and also just the unreliability. At least the period I was using DC public transport, often the metro was overcrowded and it would take extra long to get home. So really think about what fits for you, your family, your partner, your career. When you are exploring potential remote opportunities, also think about, if it's an employer that supports remote work or hybrid work, do they provide a stipend or a one-time benefit to purchase office equipment, a chair, a desk? Do they help pay for internet, cell phone? Because those expenses can add up. So if you're working hybrid or remote or work from home, does the employer use surveillance tools to monitor you every second? And I'm exaggerating, but there are a lot of organizations that are, if you haven't touched your keyboard in 10 minutes, you might get an alert, or some even do surveillance software. Often it's better if the employer does have some set policies. When you come into an organization, if you're a mid to senior level position, sometimes you can negotiate a more flexible arrangement, or if you've been in the organization for a few years. But if they don't allow hybrid, remote, flexible, digital nomad work, and you're just starting an organization, it's really hard to do this. So that's one of the things I encourage you to explore the interview process. And again, there's no right or wrong, just decide what works for you. That's it for this week's Craig and Careers. Stay tuned for more impact career tips and let us know what you think and your questions for future episodes.